Every project, whether it's big or small with scrap wood, can be a learning experience. And I was recently reminded that part of learning to get confident with your tools is starting with the basics in mind. So for number one, let's look at a simple tea light holder. This is just a piece of 1x that I cut a 1.5 inch hole in and added a little bit of stain. But this is super basic. How about we add some legs to it, and that'll make it a lot more fancy. Take something super basic and make it actually pretty fancy by just adding some really simple butt joints and legs on each side. Now just make sure it sticks below the actual base and just slightly above the actual base, and it gives it a really cool look to it. Of course, you can have it in a single or a double, and you could even have it larger. But in any case, that's a great way to take something simple and make it really fancy really easily. For number two, how about we try out a mountain napkin holder? This is a cool little project, and the hardest part is trying to get the napkins and the wood to be the same exact size. So once everything is in place, it looks like you have a little snow cap on your mountain. You first want to start off with some wood that's about 1/4 inch thick. And you take two pieces and you can actually cut the sides of the mountains at the same exact time so that they match. And this makes it a lot easier when you're trying to get everything together, because you can kind of pick out which side looks the best. And then just glue it to a base. I have it about 1.5 inches wide. You can make it whatever distance you'd like. And there you go. Just shave down those edges, make them look really nice, and you got a really cool mountain napkin holder. And just a reminder, it's always a good idea to use some kind of a top coat finish in all of your projects, because it is wood. It will absorb the oils from your hand or whatever else touches it and discolor it. So protect them. For number three, I just have a simple coffee mug holder. This right here will hold up to 4 cups, but you can actually add some additional hooks and hold up to 8. This is a really simple. This was just a 2x4 that I ripped in half. This was a 2x6 that I have screwed them together. And of course, this will allow you to get your mugs off of your counter and display them at the same time. Looking at number 4, how about we make a wooden chain? I actually built this in a previous video, and I'll put a link to this in the description just in case you're interested. But yes, this is all out of wood, all interlinked, and it's really easy to do. This is a great way to use some 1x material to have a nice decor up on your wall, or possibly even hang something light from. I wouldn't hang anything heavy, but light it can definitely handle. And of course, coat this in something, because every time somebody sees this when they're in your house, they're going to want to go over and touch it. So you want to protect the wood so it doesn't discolor. Otherwise, check it out. Moving on to number 5, we have a garden trellis. And I made this out of just one cedar fence picket. I also built this in a previous video, and I'll put that in the description just in case you're interested. One of these is great to stick out in your garden, anywhere you have any type of a climbing plant. They will love to climb this and kind of display themselves, and you'll have a really cool looking garden with a very simple project. So I hope you get a chance to build one. If you or somebody you love likes trains, then number 6 will be the project for you. To build this whistle, I started off with a piece of 1x material that I trimmed nice and square, and then I cut off about 5 inches to get it started. I then drilled out a hole that went about halfway down the wood. And if you notice, the hole is not even centered in the end of this. That doesn't matter. As long as the hole, as it's going through the wood, is nice and straight, it's okay if you're a little bit off center. I then made 2 cuts, making sure it is right in line with that hole, or the closest side. If you notice, it's actually in this corner, and if it's on a flat edge, it can be there as well. But you want 2 cuts, one of them be 90 degrees down and one to be at about 30 to 45 degrees out. And make sure that both of these cuts just barely intersect that hole. Then I took a wooden dowel and I sanded down one side here to make it nice and flat, and then I inserted it into the hole to find out the length we needed and trimmed off the remainder. Now, once we put it in place, we need to make sure that the flat side is right in alignment with those previous cuts, and then we can glue it in place. And if you did everything correctly, you can have a cool little train whistle. For number 7, I built a holder for our dog's food and water bowls. Our dog's getting a little bit older, and I wanted to lift it off the ground so she wouldn't have to reach so far to get to them. Now, I built this out of pallets, and of course, you don't have to build these out of pallets. You could build these out of some 1x4s or any other scrap you have laying around. I just used pallets because that's what I had on hand. Now, if you notice that the water bowl is so much bigger than the food bowl, and that's because our dog drinks a lot of water and apparently pees a lot as well. In any case, you can build this to whatever size you want, whatever dimensions you want, and just use a jigsaw to cut everything out. Of course, protect this because the water bowl is going to spill water as they drink. In any case, I hope you can build this for your pets. Looking at number 8, I built a really simple easel using one fence picket. Let me show you. I first cut down the picket into 4 pieces, 3 of them at about 1.5 inches wide, and then just the remaining piece, which will be used to hold everything up. On one end, to hold them all together, I drilled a hole and added a screw, along with a wing nut to make tightening and loosening a lot easier. Then on the other side, I took the outer boards and I pulled them apart as far as I could till I started to hear a little bit of cracking, and that's where I stopped. I then attached one of the smaller pieces of wood to those outer pieces, making sure not to attach it to the center one. And then about halfway up these legs, I attached a second board that's a lot wider, and this will be what holds everything. Again, I made sure not to attach it to the center one. When you're using this easel, it doesn't have any kind of a stop, like a chain or a rope to keep it from going too far, but I have found out as long as you're not putting anything heavy on it, it should stand up on its own. If you like spending time outside, then number 9 is for you. This was just a piece of scrap 4x4 that I cut down into square to make a nice little cube. And then I used a Forstner bit to drill out these holes. You don't have to have a Forstner bit. You can use whatever bit you would like. And of course, these holes don't have to be perfect because over time, this will crack and discolor. So just remember, have the appropriate number of holes and it makes a really nice yard dice that you can have fun with the family. And since we're in the process of building blocks, how about for number 10? We make some building blocks as well. These are great for those up and coming builders and makers. You can make squares, you can make triangles, you can make cylinders, you can make whatever you'd like in any style. Then they can go in and build stuff with them. Whether you just want to build maybe a house or maybe even, oh, let's make this into a hotel right there. You do whatever you'd like. You can teach them that 2 triangles make a square and you can build off of that. It's very easy to make and very easy to show them exactly how to learn and how to build stuff. So, make some building blocks. For number 11, you could take some scrap and turn it into a Christmas tree. In fact, I took some scrap wood about 2.5 years ago and made 5 versions of some Christmas trees that you could easily take apart or fold away and store away in the off season. So you don't have to worry about them being in your way when you don't need them. And just in case you're interested, I'll put a link to that video in the description, so make sure you check it out. For number 12, I've always been kind of interested in those optical illusion pictures and signs where you have a bunch of shapes and designs and if you look at it long enough, it'll turn into something. Now, of course, some of those signs are way too difficult to do with just wood, so we're going to do a really simple one with just 2 different color types. Here's an example I found online. I printed it out, then I went in and cut out each of these pieces individually and glued it onto a piece of wood. And if you look really carefully, you can probably read the name. Looking at number 13, how about we make a little antique lantern? This is a very simple project. This whole thing was made out of a 1x4. In fact, the bottom of it is just 3.5 by 3.5, so a 1x4 cut square. For the sides and the top are just strips cut down to 3/4 of an inch. And I have a little lip here on the bottom, a little inset so that the candle can sit inside right there. Now, I'd probably suggest using something like a tea light instead of a real candle because you don't want the wood to get too hot. But if you prefer to use a real candle, I'd probably suggest getting one that has like a little glass coating around it so it doesn't overheat the wood. But you could always extend this wider or taller and just change the shape of this little lantern and just give it a nice stain of a dark color, and then it'll look kind of like a little antique lantern. For number 14, how about we build a bedside docking station? I actually built this project about 4 years ago for my son. It allows him to store all the stuff he normally keeps in his pockets, like his wallet, his phone, his keys, and even his glasses, and it allows him to organize it right next to the side of his bed instead of having just a pile right there, and sometimes, well, you lose things. This keeps it nice and organized so you can find stuff. Also, let's just say a friend comes over. This allows it to keep it nice and organized so you don't have to worry about scrambling trying to clean up your room. Whenever I have people over at the house, I really hate them to go into the bathroom because there's a good chance I have toothpaste and toothbrushes just kind of thrown on the counter. So for number 15, let me show you a quick and easy way to make a little holder for this so it looks really nice. This little holder looks really nice, but is actually really easy to put together. If you look closely, this is literally just a box that has open ends. And then I drilled 3 holes in the top. The 2 on the outside are the same for your toothbrushes, and the one in the middle is definitely bigger so you can put your toothpaste. If you look down here, you can also see I have notches in the bottom ones so that as you put the toothpaste and toothbrushes in, they don't slide around too much. But overall, once you get everything in place, this is a great little holder for your bathroom, and it looks really cool. Jumping into number 16, how about we mix some of that scrap wood with some epoxy? My wife and I got in a workshop this past weekend and we took some scrap wood and made some bookmarks. This right here was just a piece of thin padauk. This right here was actually just some scrap wood that I had broken apart. This was actually a piece of wood I was going to use as a bookmark and I accidentally broke it in half. And she goes, wait a second, let me put some flowers in it. And it looked really nice. Or you can just do some little flowers and do a simple bookmark as well. And if by chance you have a small lathe, you can turn a cool little scrap wood pen as well. I made this pen just a few years ago. I believe it has about 8 different types of wood and then some blue tinted epoxy. I made a video of this and I'll put a link to that in the description just in case you're interested. For 17, how about we have a cool way of storing our toilet paper in our bathroom? I keep this unique little tic-tac-toe holder in my downstairs bathroom. Anytime we have gatherings, I get comments and people using it, and as you can tell, the bottom 2 rolls are a little bit smaller because they do get used. But overall, this is a really simple project. Let me show you. Each of these pieces are really simple. I just cut a dado in each one and slid them together so they had overlap and be as close as possible to being flush. And I did that with 4 separate pieces and just linked them together, making sure there was plenty of room on the outsides. For the X's, I did the same fashion. I just cut a dado in those, linked them together, and then I just glued them into place. For the toilet paper on the bottom, I'm just using some bent aluminum that is screwed into place on this lower shelf, and that allows the toilet paper to look like it's floating. I go into a little bit more detail on a previous video, and I'll put that in the description as well. Driving on to number 18, our neighbor really likes Jeeps. So I searched online, and I found a really cool design of a grill. And so I happened to have some leftover scrap plywood and turned it into something really cool that I think he's going to love. Now, this right here is about 1/4 inch plywood. I'd suggest at least that thick if you're gonna do something detailed like this because there are so many slots and holes in it. But I did all this with the Jigsaw. So you don't need a fancy tool to do this. Just be very careful, take your time, make sure you use the right blade, and you can come out with some really cool decor with some of that scrap plywood. For number 19, let's make a quick tool for the shop. This is a bow sander, and it's great for sanding on corners because it allows the paper on it to actually flex a little bit. So it's not such a harsh flat spot on your corners, it kind of gives you more of a contour edge. I made both of these using just a sanding belt that I traced over a 2x4, cut it out, making sure again to have a little bit of flex, slid it over the top, and now it's great to sand those edges. For number 20, let's make another tool. How about that's kind of ugly. This right here is my old wooden mallet. I literally made this out of pieces of plywood and a wooden dowel, and I beat the mess out of it over the years, and it is starting to crumble just a little bit, and I figured it is time. Let's upgrade. This mallet might look really cool, but the thing is it's super simple as well. I just use 2 different types of wood, all hardwood, making sure that the grain goes in the same direction, and then I glued everything together and then just trimmed everything flat on the sides and ends. It's really simple design, and I hope you can make something similar as well. For those of you who waited around, I actually have a 21. Remember the toothbrush holder? Well, in the process of making this, I actually had a happy accident. When I was trimming off the edges, I trimmed a little extra off just to make it nice and smooth, and I came out with a little mini picture frame. These are super lightweight. If you have any little pictures you could stick behind us, maybe tape this to the wall or wherever you'd like. And so that's kind of funny that in the process of trying to make a scrap wood project, I had a secondary scrap wood project come from it. So you never know, whenever you're making these projects, they can turn out pretty cool. I hope I earned your subscription with all these scrap wood projects. Also, don't forget about the videos in the description. Make sure you check those out. Otherwise, get out in the shop and have fun building.